First Alert. Welcome to This Week in Kansas with your host, Tim Brown.
Hello and welcome to This Week in Kansas. Thank you for being with us this morning. We are well beyond the 90-day time frame for the 2015 legislative session, and lawmakers still seem to be struggling with the budget. Taxes are a hot subject as Republicans fight with other Republicans and Democrats. Who will win? Also, Kansas Secretary of State Kris Kobach's closer to having prosecutorial power. Kobach has long sought the ability to bring charges in cases of suspected voter fraud. We have plenty to talk about this morning. Let's start right off with budget and taxes because I think that's the biggest issue that's looming ahead of our lawmakers. And, you know, it's interesting to see the debates that have been happening in the past week or two, and it has gotten downright contentious.
Well, I want to remind our viewers that we tape on Thursday night.
Yep.
Friday, the House is set to debate two different tax bills. They're just going to throw it all up and see what sticks. Basically, they're going to run one bill that is a consumption tax-based increase, and then another bill that basically restores the cuts in income taxes for small business corporations, although there's some pretty big LLCs out there that make a lot more than perhaps many talk about in it. Here's the problem they've got. They cannot find the magic formula of 63 and 21, and then, you know, I expect the governor has been very quiet. I think he's being very smart about this. He hasn't gotten in the mix. The issue we've got is the group dynamics in both the House and the Senate are quite different. The Senate has a little more experience, so, you know, they're working on issues in their own way, and in the House, a majority of the House was elected in the last 3 years. And so, you know, the majority of those people, many of those that got elected for the very first time or ran for re-election last year, they said, I'm not going to raise your taxes. And so now they basically have to raise their taxes. And so they don't want to break their word and have to go back and explain why, although I think a lot of people, many people, are aware of the issues that are involved in this circumstance. The other problem they've got is that, as I said this the last time I was on the show, many of the conservatives in the leadership are victims of their own success because now they've got a bunch of conservatives in committees like the tax committee that love to be on that committee, and then they don't want to let a tax increase out for a floor vote, and committees have quite a bit of power. Essentially, we've not got a two-party state, we've got a three-party state, and then we have all these actors outside the Senate and the House that are putting pressure on two. We know how effective the Chamber of Commerce has been, and they don't want a tax increase, and neither does AFP and some others.
KPI,
so it's 165 plans trying to find 63 and 21.
It's interesting because we've talked about this three-party state system before, and I think kind of part of the Republican revolution or the conservative revolution that we've seen in the past two election cycles, I thought, Ed, that was supposed to erase that three-party system, and we were supposed to have a super conservative Republican Party and then two or three Democrats over here in the corner.
Well, folks have had their head in the sand for most of the last 3 years on this. One legislator, a conservative legislator, sent out a report that was issued 3 years ago saying there's going to be a deficit of about $700 million. Well, it's $800 million. So they missed it by 100. We've known this for 3 years and ignored it. We even said the sun is shining. and so now reality hits. The best sign I've seen for some resolution is that in this three-party group, there are folks in the conservative piece of this that are saying, hey, reality says we've got to do this differently.
Well, Les Donovan proposed a tax increase.
Yeah, Mark Hutton here locally.
Susan Wagle.
So those are part of the conservative group of this three-part group, and they're saying, hey, we can't keep our head in the sand on this.
Ken, Michael O'Donnell said Susan Wagle has lost touch with the Republican Party, with the conservatives. Is that true?
I don't think so. I don't agree with that, and I think that Susan Wagle was right when she said, you know, what, a month or so ago, a couple of months ago maybe, that we need a fair and equitable tax system. And she pointed out how, in many ways, this is not fair. It's not fair when some employee has to pay X percentage of money, and the LLCs don't have to pay this, as an example. So I think that's, no, I don't think she's really.
To that point, Ken, I remember, and I don't know who it was that made the comment. One of you might remember. There was an attorney, I believe, who made the comment that he didn't have to pay any taxes because of, but his administrative assistant was. And a lot of people look at that and think, well, how is that fair? And then we're looking at consumption taxes to make up the difference. And I think that is the most popular line of thought so far within the legislature. But again, we get back to these consumption taxes. They are not fair. They hit the poor people more than they hit.
And I think that's what the governor favors.
And some of the Republicans are using a word that we haven't heard them use, equity.
Yeah.
That maybe our taxes should be equitable. And obviously the consumption approach requires those with lower income to pay more of their income for taxes than those with higher income.
Judge Attorney, we have next year's an election year for everybody.
That's right. The House and the Senate are both up. The Senate runs for a 4-year term.
House too.
House too.
And that adds a real challenge.
That certainly adds a little voice in the back of everybody's heads about how what they choose to do soon will affect their chances, and will they get that postcard the Saturday before election starts that says they voted for a tax increase, and how they're going to deal with that. I think it is fair to say that people have seen this coming for years. And I don't think they've just stuck their heads in the sand. They've tried to deal with it. There have been so many different balloons go up, but every one of them seems to get shot down. The debate on the Senate tax bill yesterday, it was kind of fun to listen to it online. And I remind all our viewers, all you got to do is kansas.kslegislature.org, and you can listen online. They'll be online probably while we're being broadcast on Sunday, because they're going to work through the weekend.
Yes.
And they have floated everything out there that's very possible. I think what we will see from my conversations I've had today and yesterday is we're going to see a small increase in sales tax. We're probably going to see a small increase in the gas tax. They're going to flow that money into the Department of Transportation's funds, and they're going to take the sales tax money that they originally put in there back out. So that's about $80 million. But they're going to, they're going to keep the highway fund operational. We're going to probably see a tobacco tax. I don't think we're going to see one on beer or wine or spirits. We may see something on income tax. The reality is that the House is the key, and what gets past the House, then we could talk about all the little shenanigans that will go on.
And we will, because we will take a break. But this is something that's interesting here, because I think this is a point that needs to be made. We talked about this gas tax. We talked about the sales tax a few weeks ago on the show. Kelly Arnold brought those out, and I think that was the first. A lot of people had heard about it. But I guess my point is, we keep talking about cutting taxes in the state. The governor is very proud of his tax cuts. But if you cut them over here and you raise them over here, is that truly a tax cut?
Well,
to me, that's just
I think
robbing Peter to
it
pay
is a
Paul.
shift. Well, and it may be, but the reality is that they're trying to influence economic decisions by changing where the tax comes from.
Yeah.
If someone says, look, I can make enough money in my business that I can hire, the theory is that, and I think there's some flaws in it, but they hope that they can.
Some?
It's obvious.
Some?
Okay, well, we could talk about economics, Ed. And the reality is that you've got to spur consumption if you're going to increase business income. And if you don't help the consumers, you can cut all the taxes they want, but if they don't sell it to anybody, they don't make any money. And that's the problem with the theory that they've gone so far, apparently. But if you change economic decision making on a rational level, and you say, look, you'll make more money in your business, you'll spend money in the business, you'll try to make more money in the business, then we'll get the money we need elsewhere, which is on a consumption tax.
Okay, we have to take a commercial break. I do want to say one thing, though. The judge and I were texting back and forth today, and I said he is my favorite liberal that we have on the show. So
I prefer to be a rationalist, and so the labels really don't fit.
I'm just pulling your leg. Let's take a commercial break. We'll be back in a minute.
Did you know that Wichita RV Service and Body Center is the only full-service indoor RV paint and body shop in the area? With 7 service bays, they can repair all types of RVs and are ready to assist you with your RV maintenance and service needs. From refurbishing to repairing, protecting, or enhancing both inside and out, Wichita RV Service Department has over 50 years of combined experience. Wichita RV, 3 miles east of Andover Road on the north side of Highway 54, heading to Augusta, or visit our website.
If you like quality and selection, you'll love Yoder's Ornamental Concrete in Burton, with the best selection of fountains, bird baths, planters, benches, yard lights, animals, and figurines. You're sure to find the right piece for the right spot at your home or office. Since 1984, the Yoder family has been committed in making the finest of quality statuary, the largest statuary outlet in Kansas, located on Highway 50 in Burton, Kansas. That's Yoder's Ornamental Concrete.
And welcome back. We're going to continue our show and talking about budget and taxes and what needs to be done, what has to be done to balance the budget here in the state. By law, Kansas has to have a balanced budget. And one of the I think real challenges here, or one of the things that people are really concerned about, is state government workers may have to go on furlough if the legislature can't come up with something pretty darn soon. And I don't know how.
I don't think that's
Does that
gonna happen.
include judges?
I don't know.
Well,
We have our own budget.
well, the governor says, the governor, I think,
The courts have gone on furlough before.
Yeah, I know they have.
And because we are constitutional officers, we had to get paid, but the other people ended up getting unemployment for a day or two. And I think that likelihood of a furlough occurring is about 1 in 5.
yeah, the
or
governor's
1 in
downplaying
10.
it.
Yep.
And I would like to ask, too, and what Phil says, would they have to be paid back pay if they went on furlough?
No,
When they-
I don't
when they
believe
came
so.
off of it?
No, they can go on unemployment.
Well,
That's what the
no,
court
I'm talking about
employees
later.
do.
Would there be back pay?
No, I don't think it works that way. I think if you're
okay.
furloughed as a government employee, you're just
They're
out
not
that money.
federal
Is that-
employees.
Is that accurate?
They've changed the laws. I don't know.
Maybe you should talk to the university's administrator and find out.
It doesn't affect retired
Oh,
I was
okay.
going to say we have
professors. I know
three
that.
people up
Yeah.
here sweating a little
Yeah.
bit, maybe. I don't know. Well, realistically, though, and seriously, because this is a huge deal. You know, it was interesting to read some of the comments from some of the lawmakers. If they don't come up with something, then you're going to have what, $200 million in cuts to schools here, which can't happen. It won't happen, particularly in the midst of this lawsuit. And really, there's no other viable alternative. Something's going to have to increase.
Here's what they've been doing in the legislature. They are trying to deal with these people that really have not been there very long, don't have a lot of experience. There's a lot of institutional memory gone. So they're trying to build that institutional memory. For example, the idea of, well, let's just kill the Bioscience Authority. Nobody really wanted to do that, but they wanted to show those that there are alternatives out there, but they are quite unpalatable.
Yeah.
Just as the furloughs are quite unpalatable for anyone who is supposed to be governing. And so they are trying to school their colleagues that, if you don't vote for this very unpalatable tax increase, here are things that taste much worse you're going to have to eat.
But it is unpalatable, and I think the people sitting at home watching this stuff, they've got to be getting sick of this, because they're elected officials that are up there to do a job. And Ed, jump in on this one, because I want to get your thoughts.
Well,
Part of the job to govern is to govern with some responsibility.
The leadership, I think the governor as well, thought, let them deal with a spending bill. Let them tighten up spending. And it's still an increase, but a tighter spending approach for the next 2 years. And then, once they resolve that, they'll realize that we've got to raise taxes. Yeah. And I think, as the judge says, maybe it is an educational process that's going on. It doesn't appear to be too educational.
Well, you have to pay close attention.
Well, that's true.
Okay.
That's
Now
true.
let's look at where they're at. Okay, the budget's pretty much put to bed. The hole has shrunk a little bit. It's about $385 million over 2 years. And if these tax plans don't work over this weekend, there are bills in the hopper right now that are going to be used to show them $190 million further cut in budgets. I mean, there are people out there working right now trying to figure out where to find that other $200 million so that there's a mix of tax increase and further budget cuts. The problem is they're to the bone already. And I mean, they have to fund, the problems they've got are the largest increase in spending is occurring in the caseloads for DCF, for children in need of care, and for families and welfare and food stamp and all those other things, Medicaid, Medicare, that the state has to pony up some money on. And so, you know, they're talking about if we cannot get this tax increase going, they're going to be running another round of cuts. People will hear the car keys in their pockets as they get very close to the end. And, you know, if you have to, you can find 2 or 3 bills just because they want to go home to get the 63 and 21.
Well, they don't want to be working late at night either. You noticed the
Well,
comments
we've
about
lost-
that
we've
because
lost
they
a
make
couple
bad decisions. They
legislators
make bad
trying to go
decisions
get-
when they're tired and late at night. And
Well,
this sort of
but-
thing. And by the way, Les Donovan did say, he said, do you all want to go back and tell your school, you know, in your communities and tell them we're cutting $200 million out of the education budget, you know? This kind of thing, if you don't get this done now. And he said he's a realist, you know. It's time to get to work on this, get something done.
You know, one more quick point, and then we've got to move on. But you made the comment a couple of weeks ago, Phil, about governing is hard work.
It is.
And I think a lot of people don't realize how difficult the job actually is until they get up there and they have to sit in that seat and they have to be in these meetings and make these decisions. And it's really easy to run on a postcard but when you actually have to put in the sweat and the work, it's a whole different animal.
Well, when you're in committee meeting, for example, when I was on public health and welfare, and you dealt with people that were recipients of these services, and you put a face with it and realized that if you don't fund this, something horrible is going to happen to this family or this child or this person, then you know the realities of it come in around.
And this is where it all comes full circle. And we've talked about this on the show before. You make these cuts where you're penny wise, pound foolish, and I go back to Judge Riddell. You see these cuts that are made, and we can save X amount of dollars here, but what is the true cost 10 years down the road, 20 years down the road? And you never quantify that, and that's the trick to this. You can't really
Well,
quantify
one
it.
thing that's
They try
going
to
on
quantify.
is we've got a group of spend and borrow Republicans. We are borrowing more, and we're going to do another big pension borrowing. We're putting debt on our kids and grandkids, and they are extending some of this debt out to folks that aren't born yet, and just to save these tax cuts.
Okay, when they borrow to help capers and fund our retirements, I use that for all 3 of us here, they
Not me.
don't spend that money. Well, no, I didn't talk about you, but they don't spend that money. They invest that money. That money doesn't go anywhere. They borrow money from people who want a tax-free, you know, it's a non-taxable return. They get 3 or 4% or whatever, but they go out and use that money in the markets, and they're doing pretty good.
It's a credit, using their credit card to pay off a credit card. That's what it is, plain and simple. It is a last resort in state finance.
It's borrowing capital
It
to
is
make money.
it's a roll of the dice with state finance, and that's
have-
your those
have
are
to
your
take-
resources.
Have to take a commercial break. When we come back, we're going to talk about Kris Kobach, prosecutorial power. There won't be any debate up here about that.
You are my sunshine, always sunshine.
We're trying to protect our children from a threat that we don't fully understand.
The Whispers premieres tomorrow, 10, 9 Central at ABC.
Weather radio's work best when programmed for your area. Tuesday, I'll be at the Andover Dillons at Kellogg and Andover Road to help you program your radio for specific severe weather alerts to protect you and your loved ones.
Cake First Alert Weather.
If you think about it, the plumbing system in your house is really not so different than the plumbing system in your body. Over time, they both become less reliable. Nobody knows that better than the experts at Benjamin Franklin Plumbing. Hey, Kris, how's the patient?
Bottom's rusted out.
Point is, if you don't take care of your plumbing will let you down.
This one's leaking.
That is embarrassing. For maintenance and replacement programs, call Benjamin Franklin Plumbing.
Hey, Mike, do you smell gas?
Gas? No, not me.
And welcome back. Kris Kobach would like to have the authority to prosecute the tens of violators of, I'm sorry. I couldn't,
You couldn't help that,
I know.
could you?
I couldn't. I apologize. I'm being a smart
How
aleck right
about
off the
ones?
bat. But
The ones.
you know how I feel about this one right out of the
Well,
gate.
we'll see
Go
what
ahead.
we can prove. All right. Here's the Kris wants this prosecutorial power. Our Secretary of State wants this prosecutorial power because he doesn't believe that district attorneys or county attorneys in their prosecutorial discretion have got the resources or the desire to prosecute these kinds of cases. They're complex, they're complicated.
I think that is offensive to these local district attorneys. I would be offended if I were a district attorney and told.
That isn't what I said. I'm just
No, I'm
telling
not
you what
saying
the
you said that.
proponents of the bill are.
Yeah.
Right. Well, I'll tell you what. Prosecutors decline to file cases every day, and they do it for a number of different reasons. And usually it's
for
because
lack
they
of
can't.
evidence, so.
Yeah, I know. Usually it is lack of evidence. Absolutely correct.
No priority.
And so Kris believes that he and his staff will be able to do it.
No, of course.
I have to admit it's a little bit outside the normal skill set for a Secretary of State who's basically a glorified clerk.
So is he going to have to hire a prosecutor then? And so are we going to have to pay a prosecutor? That's
He's a
gonna sit around in
lawyer.
the office?
He'll contract with
He's
himself.
a lawyer.
All right. Well,
He's a lawyer.
so he's going to prosecute
He
these
does
himself.
have
So-
a private
But here's my
firm
point
on
on
the
this.
side.
Here's my point on this, and you guys jump in. So are we going to have to hire another prosecutor that's going to have to work for the state,
Well,
that's going to
here-
work in his office? And if so, what's this person going to do all day? Are they going to play?
They're going to hunt.
Yeah.
They're
And I don't
gonna
know
be
how
out
many of
hunting.
these cases is he going to have?
Well, exactly.
How many of these cases are we going to have? The League of Women Voters, whom I don't necessarily drag out as the ultimate of politics or anything like this. I have some problems with them. But they did go on record this past week saying people make mistakes. They may come in and think they're registered, and they're not. Are they going to be charged with attempting to vote, coming in and so on? I mean, what are the limits on this? That's another question here. I'm not quite certain about what this is all about.
Ed,
I mean, how do you police this?
Well, and I think that's a legitimate question. Ed,
Yeah.
Barry Grissom, Kansas Kansas attorney.
U.S. attorney.
U.S. attorney
Yeah.
for Kansas.
Yeah.
Sorry, nice guy. He was
very good.
kind of called on the carpet by Kris Kobach a while back for not prosecuting these cases, and instead of meekly just letting this thing go, Barry was not meek at all and said, "Hey, he's never given us any cases to prosecute.
Bring me something.
Where are these cases? And prove it. If you're gonna throw me under the bus, you better prove it." Never heard anything from Kris Kobach after that on that one.
Well, this may turn into an embarrassment for Kobach.
Does it matter?
Well, particularly, he's got or prior embarrassments, but in this search or hunt for somebody to prosecute, it may come up short and be an embarrassment to him.
All right,
in
Phil,
the last couple of years of his term.
I know you're feeling a little left out here.
No, not at all.
By the way, I was going to comment a little bit off the subject here. I had lunch yesterday with a student. He's been one of my best students I've ever had at Wichita State. He's a University of California, Berkeley law student. He just finished his first year.
Mm-hmm.
He says, you should see people, he says, how they react when I tell them I'm from Kansas. He's out there in Berkeley.
Well,
I can
and
imagine.
And about Kris Kobach. He brought up Kris Kobach, and he brought up the $25 limitation on ATMs, for our welfare people. And this kind of thing. And of course, he says they have to get the Wizard of Oz in somehow.
Well,
so we'll get quite a reputation. Get a big reputation out there.
Yeah.
Finish us up because we have to go to commercial break, Phil.
Well, there was quite a bit of resistance in the legislature to do this. There also was, Kris wanted his own PAC too, and there's a lot of resistance to that too. So, we'll see. I was frankly surprised the bill's gotten as far as it has, and it's on the governor's desk. We'll see what he does with it. And then, if it really does become law, which I suspect it will, we'll see what he does with it. Yeah. And, somebody may want to come on and talk about it.
Then he's really got to, the proof is at that
the proof's
point,
in the pudding.
Who's he going to prosecute? Let's take a commercial break. When we come back, we'll talk about guns on campus. Be right back.
When we created the Silverado Rally Edition, we figured, why stop there? These 4 new Silverado Special Editions are just the beginning. From this year's fastest-growing full-size truck brand, Chevy Silverado. Or during the Chevy Memorial Day sale, choose this Silverado All-Star with a total value of $8,500 when you finance through select lenders. Sale ends Monday. See your local Chevy dealer today.
We believe how well you sleep affects how you feel. If your mattress is over 8 years old, you may experience anger, sadness, and fear you'll never get a good night's sleep. At Mattress Firm, we guarantee you'll sleep happy on your new mattress and wake up feeling nothing but joy. Meet Riley's emotions in Disney Pixar's movie Inside Out, in theaters in 3D June 19th. Plus, enter Mattress Firm's Sleep Emotions Contest for a chance to win $5,000, a Beauty Rest Queen mattress set, and more. Only at Mattress Firm.
And welcome back. It's been a fun show so far, so let's talk about guns, because that never gets anybody wound up, does it? And Phil was going to start us off on this, because I know this is near and dear to your heart.
Well, you know, the holopophobes are active. That's basically the irrational fear of firearms. Okay, here's what's got this
I've never
all started.
heard that one before. So.
Yeah, well, it's actually in the DCM. But, okay, so this year they passed what they call constitutional carry, which means an individual can carry a firearm concealed on their person as long as they're not a convicted felon, you know, without having to go through everything that I said they needed to go through to get a carry permit when I wrote the original bill in 2005 and 2006. A lot of people are worried about it because the universities have an exemption that lasts
it's
for
4 years. It was 4 years when they passed this.
And so, you know, they can see the clock running, and so the student group with someone from the Student Senate and some faculty from KU want to try to figure out how to get the legislature to change it and extend their exemption so that, you know, the little signs protect them that are on the doors that you can't carry in there. So, you know, the signs must be magic.
All right, Ken is chomping at the bit down there.
Kansas AAUP, American Association of University Professors, had a meeting here about 3 weeks ago, and they're very concerned about this. And in fact, there were predictions because we had a little, might say, a simulation or something. Put us through some things, predictions, and where's the universities going and what's going to be happening. One of them was, you know, university administrations are getting too powerful, getting more powerful. But also, they said, you know, there will probably be deaths on campus, shootings, if these things go through, and so on and so forth. And of course, they talked about.
But there have been.
They talked about, well, that's right, and they talked about alternatives
already.
To, for example, or ways to cope with this to some extent. They had various suggestions and ideas. They're just talking about it. This wasn't anything they were advocating per se. But one is a professor, for example, holding office hours. Are you going to do that online now? Are you going to hold open door office hours? You know, and so on. I mean, seriously, it came up. And other kinds of things like this. And it also talked about metal detectors at the doors. Now, just think of what you're going to have in terms of personnel and so on. Expenses and costs and so on.
As a retired professor, I have to say I had numerous experiences while a professor dealing with students who were not happy with grading or something like that, that if they did have a gun, it would worry me. And in some cases, you're essentially ejecting somebody out of class. You might be throwing them out of a program because of some violation. So there's some serious conflicts.
But the argument could be made.
The law doesn't keep them from doing that now. You know, I mean, the law punishes them after the fact. And the reality is that there have been incidents on campus where lawful permit holders have stopped mass murderers early in their attempts to kill as many people as they can. And so the reality is that this law is not going to change the circumstances. You know, it's already the law in 6 states. It's been the law in New Hampshire and Alaska for decades, if not over a century in New Hampshire. And these states have not fallen into an anarchistic chaos. You know, life will go on. And
well, life
this
will
fear
go on,
is irrational.
but there will be incidents.
Yeah.
And that's
the fear.
The law was changed, though.
We're out of time, gentlemen. Thank you very much for being on the program. We could have gone for another 15 minutes on that one, I think.
But
We appreciate you being on the show. We appreciate you watching the show. If you have any questions or comments, email me at thisweekinkansas@kake.com. I'll pass them all along to Phil Journey.